Hello, good morning, welcome. I'm Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. You are listening to damradio.com. Very glad to have you this morning. I actually got some sleep last night, so, there's a switch. Pretty crazy. But it's pretty sad because I never sleep. And on the days that I do sleep, it's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And some kind of lunatic, and all I do is work. I wanted to let you know before I get started on my topic today that tomorrow is Civic Outlaws Day here on Damn Radio, and our program. Why does something feel echoey in here? I don't know what's going on. But it is echoey, and I don't like it. At any rate, tomorrow is Civic Outlaws Day, and I have another analysis, another bit of an article. As you know, our focus for the last, several months, and then a couple of, we have several topics that we're working on. The two most important, there's three. One is licensing in general, issues that I spoke about here. The other one is legislative action to expand the police state, in my view. I noticed that in my email this morning, when I checked it, I got a response to the sunshine request that I sent out to Representative Benny Cook. I haven't read it yet, haven't uploaded anything, haven't checked out any of the documents he sent me, or what the answer is. Nothing. I chose, since I didn't have the time to look at it and give it any respect, I chose not to. And but I will after the show, and I'll go dig in. I've already written another article regarding one of his another sponsored bill that he has done. Where's this echoing coming from? It's driving me crazy. Anyway, I've written this article, and this one is with the help of glasses. I can tell you what it is. And so for tomorrow's show, I'll be going through my fifth article, and this one's kind of a combination. There's a Senate bill and a House bill. The Senate bill is the companion of the House bill. And it's about ATC. The House bill is 3154. The Senate bill is 1407. And basically, it's really interesting to me. And I don't have any concrete convictions. I have my first impressions of it. And my first impressions are, I don't like it. I think anything, and if you get to know me, you will know that I don't like the expansion of state power. I just don't like it. I believe they have enough power. They don't need any more. I believe the bureaucrat needs to tone it down a little bit and turn into an administrator like they're supposed to be, and not geez, I'm God's gift to the planet because I happen to run an agency. Hell with you. No offense, but who cares? It's what makes you God's gift to the planet? You're not. None of us are. It's live and let live. You need to work with people and allow people to expand their own dreams, not just you and yours. And if you're in the bureaucrat position because it's the easy route, well, I don't have as much respect for you as I would of somebody else. When I look at a bureaucrat, the sad truth is I see a person who's learned how to kiss ass or has had people kiss ass up to them. That's how you get there. Truthfully, there's no other. You get your positions because you're connected. That's why. People that aren't connected, we get a bitch from the sidelines. And that's how it works. That's America. That's mostly every other country on the planet, too. It doesn't matter the form of government. The government is not your friend. Very seldom is that the case. And the government is just because they're not out to get you doesn't mean you shouldn't be paranoid. It's a simple equation, and I'm telling you, things that expand the power of the police state drive me crazy. But that is not my topic for today. But tomorrow's article will be. It's called, and I've already written it. It's done. It's Civic Outlaws Series article number 5. House Bill 3154, Senate Bill 1407, the 10% owner dragnet, and the return of discretionary licensing policy. This is BS. This is not. These are not good bills, and you should be sending things to your representatives and saying, "Look, anything that expands the power of the state, I'm not for it." And, the only thing they listen to is losing their position, unfortunately. But that means you got to participate. And I don't claim to be the greatest of participants in my life, but I make my opinions known. But most of the time for me, it's more of a, well, there you go. I've understood this ever since I served in the military and watched the BS that went on at the very high levels as a diplomatic interpreter. I'm telling you, I got some stories about those. I have some horror stories about those times. I had fun in it. I enjoyed it. But boy, they made it difficult. And that's the problem, is a government made up of sycophantic a-holes who just want to improve their power and get to the next level. And they're lifelong bureaucrats with no ambition except to be a lifelong bureaucrat. Now, a lifelong administrator, that I can respect. But a lifelong, I am more important than the system, I'm against. And so I will call it out if I see it that way, because I don't like it. And so that's what I will do. Anyway, but that is not my topic for today. My topic for today is back on the international thing. I watched some pretty cool, several of them, and I'm going to share them with you because it's important. Everybody knows that I watch religiously, just like I do watch news and events and stories and YouTube and Telegram and things like that from the Western point of view. I also watch it from different points of view. Al Jazeera, Times of India, Moscow Times, that I participated and watch. I watch especially Russian language programming, news channels. They have a 60 Minutes, which is a good one that's really longer than 60 Minutes. It was like 3 hours. And so it's hard to get through the 60 Minutes when it's really not 60 Minutes. I read Russian newspapers. I'm kind of partial to Ukraina.ru and RT, because RT you can do in Russian and in English. The Russian version is better. And if you do the Russian Ukraina.ru, one of the reasons I like them is because they publish my articles. And they've published 4 or 5 of them, in Russian over there. And so I'm kind of impartial to them. And they have opinions which I like. And I met those people when I was at Kazan for the BRICS conference a couple of years ago, year and a half. So anyway, I follow... I try to get it as much as possible from the horse's mouth. I don't like... I listen to other interpretations, and I like doing it. But it's mostly to say, this is some of the topics that people are talking about. I've picked 3 things for today to go over with you. And they're all war-related, but not from the war point of view or from the war issue, but from the effects of the war, the economics of it all. And Vladimir Putin yesterday gave an interview to one of the Russian channels. I think it was Channel 1, Peter V. Canal, and but I'm not positive. I know I've seen that reporter before. And he, he's a young man, and he's pretty good. So I'm telling you, I'm looking, and I want to take this from the point of view of this. In order to begin the show and begin this topic anyway, I want to say the following, that, and I've kind of used this before as an analogy, but I'm going to try it again. When I was a young man, I used to play, especially at home. I've grew up with 10 siblings, would have been 11, but one passed away. And so when I was younger, I was right in the middle of this, 5 younger than me, 5 older. And when I was younger, we used to play a lot of board games, a lot of sports outside too. And one of the most famous games that we played all the time is Risk. It's a classic, Milton Bradley world domination game. Risk is simple. It's an easy game, an easy concept. Once you understand the mechanics and the limitations. There's essentially only one optimal way to play it. Trouble is, we all knew it, so it got boring pretty quickly. And if you'd either, and the only way to win is all risk right now and take whatever little chunk of either the South American portal or the Australian portal. They've changed the rules. Christmas time, I played it at my son's house, and they've changed some of the rules and some of the connections, probably to get rid of this particular avenue. But if you didn't pick one of those two options, you weren't going to win. That's all there is to it. You can't defend Europe. Nobody ever starts a land war in Asia. You're not going to win. And so it's nonsense. But if you start in Australia, you can slowly build and take over the world. It's an economic concept. If you start in South America, you have a fairly good chance. But when's the last time Australia, in reality, started a war? I mean, seriously. When's the last time in South America, other than the United States, when did they have war down there? Seriously. I mean, ask yourself that question. We've been involved in all kinds of wars. Wonder who the aggressor is. Who's the aggressive person on the planet? We're protected by two oceans and two allies that we control. Okay, and so the fact is, nobody really, it's not going to be easy for somebody to bring the war to us. So we take it to them because our defensive measures are so powerful that things have come up, and that's what we're doing right now. So, but risk assumes something very convenient. And here's the problem: if you don't play on the actual board game, if you don't pick one of those two strategies, the chances of winning are virtually non-existent. They're very, very tiny. You can still do it, but you got to have somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're doing. Or, more importantly, luck has to be with you because it's nothing but a dice game. And so, but the chances, once you understand the chances of rolling a particular number, you know that as well. So sometimes the cards are with you, sometimes they're not. Anyway, there's risk assumes something convenient, that the board stays identical, the rules stay identical, and every move happens in sequence, meaning not everybody's attacking at once. It's only one movement. That's it. But we're in a world. So in risk, you attack, next player takes turn, next player attacks. It's neat, it's orderly, and completely unrealistic. There was another war game that I enjoyed much more. I don't remember who did this one, something Hill, I think. I don't remember. But it's called Diplomacy, and Diplomacy was a very different game. In Diplomacy, all the moves happened simultaneously. Nobody knows what the other players are going to do until the movement of everything, everybody moves at the same time. You have a negotiation phase, then you have a moving phase. And so every day you make a move. And during the day, you meet with other players or phone and talk to other players and try to make deals, or say, what if I did this? What if I did that? And you learn, you can negotiate, you can make alliances, and you can betray those alliances. And that one is a little bit more interesting, for sure, and especially if somebody is prone to saying something but not following through. You learn that pretty quickly, but it's a game. You have to kind of leave that out. And the consequences ripple across the whole board all at the same time. That game is much closer to how real-world domination actually works. And then, so I watched something pretty critical last night. This interview of Vladimir Putin, which I'm going to share with you. It's short, 5-10 minutes. I think the whole thing that I transcribed is 8 minutes, and I'm as close as possible to the original translation as to the original intent. But something is always lost in translation anyway, the tiny nuances, but I'm trying to get it as close to the way he said it. Okay, because I watched it, I saw it, I know what he means. And I'm trying to get very close because this is how the world actually works. And this is where there was a second interview I watched with an economist that I follow. And this economist, his name is Mikhail Khazin, and he's from Moscow. I think he's a Moscow-based economist, and very, very, very smart. And remember, a lot of these people that are my age grew up and went to college, went to economic school during the Soviet Union, which was a very, very, very different economics degree. I have an economics focus in my degree, which means I took enough to be dangerous of economics, but it's not a full economics. Mine is economics and Russian. And so I have Russian studies, which is Russian history, Russian culture, Russian stuff like that. And University of Illinois, so it's not like I went to God's gift of universities, And then I have a law degree afterward. But economics was basically my base. And so I like watching how these people think and how Khazin especially thinks. And Mikhail, I'd love to have him on the show. His English sucks, but I'd like to have him on the show, or I thought about interviewing him in Russian and getting something interesting because he's a very interesting guy. And he was interviewed by Vladimir Solovyov. And that's another, I think the interview went forever, but I got a 10, 15-minute segment that I want to share with you because that's important. And I want to talk about the focus. So Khazin explained that in the Soviet Union, economics was not taught as it is in the West. And he's absolutely right. And it was taught in the West, economics is all math. Okay? But it's taught as, in the Soviet Union, it was taught as a political economic model because the state is important in those type of models. And virtually the rest of the world follows those kind of things. In the U.S., some of Europe, a little bit, these Western models of only mathematics presume all these other things that don't necessarily exist. And you have imperfect data because the data only comes if you presume production systems are not going to be bothered, logistics aren't going to be bothered, are a stable model. Because you put it in there, assuming, the very first thing you say when building an economic model is assuming all the facts are unchanged. Assuming these facts, then we can project the following model. Assuming that the spring comes on March 23rd like it normally does, we can predict that, and people are able to start their planting in Minnesota of whatever it is they choose to grow, or corn in Iowa, that they're going to grow. They plant that, assuming they can plant between March 23rd and April 15, the crops will be blah. But the world's imperfect. You get tornadoes, you get craziness, you get these other things, and they all affect. That's why economic models are so difficult to do. And in America and in Western capitalistic sorts of governments, there is government modeling, but there it's like assuming your government doesn't turn into some raging bureaucratic nonsense, and they try to destroy your mode of life because that's what they do. They're bureaucrats. They have nothing else to do. But assuming they leave you alone and don't create new rules, my Shell oil platforms in the Gulf will perform as blah. But the model has to be stable. So real economics, how it functioned in practice in the West, is far different than the stable models that they used in the Soviet practice, because there, the means of production were all controlled by the state. Okay? And so there, they had a far more stable set of models. And so they did learn the mathematical things, but they also learned other impacts that maybe weren't so stable. They learned about sanctions. They learned about targeting of their markets by other people. The world isn't stable, okay? And every time Donald Trump or a president opens his mouth, the world changes. And this is what we were talking about, because our models always assume rational actors, right? Perfect information, a balanced market, and most important of all, stable logistics. But real economics do not behave that way. Real economics behave like the game diplomacy, not like risk. Everything moves at the same time. Supply chains are moving, military forces moving, energy markets are moving, financial markets are moving, okay? So with that in mind, I want to get to, if I can find it real quick, I have to find the translation of Vladimir Vladimirovich, and it's coming. I'm almost there. I went through a lot today. I got to get all the way back to where I was, that I have my interpretation. Because that Iran and Dubai and oil with Khazin was very interesting, and I definitely want to share that. So we're going to talk about this interview. It's pretty short, and basically it's this is a very close English translation of his entire interview, which wasn't more than 7-8 minutes. So I'm going to read the question to you, and then I'm going to follow up with the answer by Vladimir Putin, and then give you my own opinion on it. So basically, the journalist says, we watched your meetings this morning. May I question right off the bat? You yourself just said what is happening in global gas markets, and many countries are already practically in a panic over what is happening. Prices have skyrocketed, and it is unclear what will happen next with prices. It is unclear what will happen next with supply. And of course, it inevitably comes to mind that Europe keeps banning our gas, banning it, and new bans are approaching. In April, bans on short-term delivery of liquefied Russian gas are supposed to enter into force. Then there will be some other bans as well that they are talking about on the European side. Vladimir Putin says, yes, and this is under contracts that were concluded sometime around the summer of last year. So they entered into contracts last year in the summer, and the journalist says yes. And then there are more bans, and today they've already begun to say that maybe the date for the bans should be shifted, pushed back. Europeans are asking that the dates for these bans get pushed back because the U.S. invaded with Israel. Well, the U.S. backed Israel. Israel invaded. We're just the lapdog of Israel, and so we're in. You know, we're in all the way. And so, given what is happening in the world today, I've begun to say that these dates should be shifted. Thoughts, please. And then Vladimir Putin says, first of all, and this is a direct translation, and he says, first of all, Russia has always been and remains a reliable supplier of energy resources for all of our partners, including, by the way, European ones. And we will continue to work in exactly this mode with those of our partners who themselves are reliable counterparts. For example, such as those in Eastern Europe, Slovakia, and Hungary. We supply our energy resources there, both oil and gas, and we intend to continue doing this in the future. If, of course, the leadership of these countries continue to pursue the same policy as today, namely that they remain a reliable partner for us. As for Europe, what is happening today on the European market is, of course, first and foremost, the results of the erroneous policy of European authorities in the fields of energy. This is an abuse of the green agenda. This is the use of all of these instruments for domestic political activity and for achieving some sort of party or some group objective. Such policy has nothing in common with the interests of the people of these countries. Now, indeed, prices have risen both for oil and for gas across the board. As for oil, that is understandable. This is connected, among other things, with restrictions on Russian oil, and additionally, everything that is happening now in the Middle East with the aggression against Iran. All of this overlaps one on top of the other and leads to difficult and, frankly, very serious results for consumers. As for gas, the surge in prices on the European market is not even directly connected today with restrictions on gas supplies to the European market. After all, the main gas suppliers to Europe have not reduced their volume. And who are the main suppliers today? Algeria, the U.S., Norway, and to some extent, Russia. No one has reduced supply, and prices have already jumped to 700. Why? because the general situation on the world market, including oil market, and in this case, gas market, because the overall situation, because buyers have appeared who are ready to purchase the same natural gas at a higher price. In this case, due to the events in the Middle East, due to the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz, and so on. If such premium buyers appear, then from the European market, I think, some traditional suppliers, including Americans and American companies, will, of course, move their resources there where they pay more. This is natural. There is nothing political about it. It's only business. That's all. Therefore, I repeat, once again, this is the result of the mistaken policy of European authorities over the course of many years. And in this regard, I think about the following, as you just said. And this is serious, what he says right here. This is how Vladimir Putin thinks, okay? And that's why it's important to provide for you the whole thing. This is how he thinks. And this is not uncommon. This is a very Russian thought process. And by the way, this is a very American thought process at the same time. Those people who understand the world and understand what they're doing are pretty blunt about what they can do. And here he continues this. As you just said, Europe plans in a month, the 24th is the last day, from the 25th on, March he's talking about, to introduce restrictions on the purchase of Russian gas, including liquefied gas. And then in a year, in 2027, even more restrictions up to a full ban of gas from Russia. But now, other markets are open to us. And perhaps for us, it's more profitable for us right now to stop supplying the European market and move those markets that are opening and secure ourselves there, which they've already done, by the way. And here, too, I want this to be clear. There is no political background, no political agenda. But if in a month or two they're going to close us anyway, then perhaps it would be better for us to stop right now and move to where the countries that are reliable, move toward reliable partners instead, and strengthen our positions there. But this is not a decision. This is meaning, he says, this isn't a decision right now. I am just thinking out loud. But I will certainly instruct the government so that together with our companies, we will work together through this issue. Now, in the West, all you'll get is a little blurb about, Putin said he's cutting us off. No, that's not what he said. He said, I'm considering cutting it off because, hell, you're going to cut us off in a year anyway. And on the 24th, there's some serious restrictions coming up this month. You don't want us here. We've already been making counter plans. We're going to go somewhere else. This is what he's talking about. This is how the world thinks, right? And the journalist says to him, well, today there's another important piece of news. Our gas tanker. So I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but I'll give you the short question, then I'll give you some stuff. One of our gas tankers has been attacked in the Mediterranean Sea. Now, we're not talking in the Black Sea. We're talking in the Mediterranean. And the Mediterranean is wide open, right? And it was seriously attacked. So Ukraine did what the U.S. did outside of Sri Lanka and sent a missile. Well, this one was drones because Ukraine doesn't have any sea-based missile capability. All they got is drone. And the Russia blew up their only ship is what I understand. But I could be mistaken on that. But I know that this action was with drones and some pretty serious drones because I don't know that the ship actually sank, but its cargo was destroyed, never got to where it was going. So the war is expanding, friends and neighbors. The war is expanding. And now the Russian ship was targeted. And the U.S., in Sri Lanka, in open international waters, blew up an Iranian ship, and just to say, look what we can do. Okay? And then, we can do this. Well, we knew you could do that. That hasn't happened since World War II. And now it's happened. And, all the guys on the submarine will get new rewards and get awards to pin on their uniforms to say, hey, this is a great thing. We blew up the first boat since World War II. No, this is the first salvo, unfortunately. Well, it's not really the first. This is the first sea-based salvo against another ship. that is going to lead to we are being dragged into a world war. That's my belief, and each step will become more and more like a dice roll in risk because you have nothing else that you can do. But don't think that the Iranians are giving up, because they're not gonna. And we've created a religious martyrdom over there by the decapitation strike, and that's what I think. But anyway, this guy, the journalist, asked a question. What do you think about, to Putin, what do you think about our ship getting blown up in the Mediterranean Sea? And this is a serious escalation by Ukraine. Ukraine can't win on the ground, so the Ukraine is hard pushing to get the U.S. and NATO involved against Russia. And I think the U.S. and Israel are in the same boat, with the Iranian thing. And so Zelensky is trying to get the attention back on him. Look what we can do. Hey, we can send our Ukrainian experts. Yeah, they're really experts. If they were experts, Russia wouldn't have advanced as far as they're getting. And, we can attack deep inside of Russia. Well, good for you. What are you going to do to defend yourself against the attacks that are going on deep inside of your territory? So now the Ukrainian people are being sent as experts to the Middle East to say, here's how you beat Russian drones. Well, you aren't beating Russian drones now. Anyway, this ship blew up. The Ukrainians attacked a ship in the Mediterranean. Serious escalation. And Vladimir Putin's answer to this, the guy says, what do you think of this? He said, well, we think this is a terrorist attack. We have encountered things of this kind more than once. What is surprising is that this only worsens the situation in the global energy market, including the gas market, and in this case, primarily for Europe. It turns out that the Kiev regime is actually biting the hand that feeds it, namely the hand of the European Union. The European Union provides the Kiev regime, with endless assistance, both weapons and money, and the Kiev regime creates nothing but problems for the European Union, one after another. Vladimir Putin's very blunt. As for the general behavior, this behavior is quite aggressive on the parts of the Kiev regime and very dangerous because, as I've already said, according to the information available to our special services, just as in the Nord Stream pipelines, they were once blown up with Kiev, with the support of certain Western intelligence services, an operation is being prepared to blow up the Blue Stream and Turk Stream gas pipelines. We have already informed our Turkish friends about this matter. We will see what happens in this sphere, but this is a very dangerous game, especially in today's world. End of the interview. And it was only, it's not the end of the interview. The interview went on for a while, but that was only two questions that I took out of the interview because I think the analysis of the world gas and oil market is important, okay? And because we're not insulated from it even ourselves, okay? I told you yesterday, went to the gas station and I paid I was all happy about paying $2.60, $2.59 a month ago. And I only fill up a couple times a month. I don't go anywhere. And so I filled it up. It didn't cost anything. The difference was $12, I think, this time when I filled it up. Overall, it's only a 25-gallon tank, and $12 over 20, that's 50 cents a gallon. And we're not done. It's on the way up. It's going to be worse. It's going to get worse. And that is why I wanted to include this Russian guy, Mikhail Khazin, in his interview with Solovyov. And this is from something called, it was Vladimir Solovyov's radio program. He has a morning radio program. This guy works and works and works. I mean, he's got his show every night is like 3 hours. And then he has a radio program that's like 2 hours or 3. And it goes on. And I forget what that's covered. Open something with Solovyov. I forget what it's called, but he's got also the news. His awesome format where he has all these political and economics and professors and artists and people that talk about the views. And he has a show evenings with Vladimir Solovyov. And I try to watch the Sunday one. The Sunday one is usually kind of a big deal. And I try to watch that one and get as much out of it as I can. But it's 3 hours long. And so I usually only get in the first couple hours, and then I keep, this is a radio interview. This was not with Mikhail Khazin, who sometimes is a commentator on the Solovyov show, but he was being interviewed on the radio program this time. Khazin has his own channel on YouTube as well, and Telegram, and I've watched him on that too. He's an interesting cat, and he knows some stuff. He's an economics guru, and he understands the world quite well. So, Vladimir Solovyov, he says, Mikhail Leonidovich, Iran is delivering asymmetric strikes against the world economy, and it is happening in a harsh manner. And Khazin says, well, not so much against the American economy as against the British-American infrastructure in the Middle East. Now, this is, he pointed immediately Solovyov in the right direction, in what is critical here. And this is important. He says, moreover, there are questions here. I mean, it was so interesting to watch. I was glued to this guy. And it was only, the portion I'm reading to is only like 10, 15 minutes of it. And I got time to get us there for sure. And he says, moreover, they're taken out British-American infrastructure in the region, not American economy, British-American. Moreover, there are also questions here because information is already circulating. Tucker Carlson even spoke about it, that Iran did not strike these economic facilities in Saudi Arabia, that it was actually a diversionary operation carried out by Israel, this to get Saudi Arabia involved. So this talk is out there, that these strikes against infrastructure in other countries, and he says, as for the strikes on Bahrain and Dubai, yes, those are strikes against American infrastructure. But considering that they have partially blocked the Strait of Hormuz, then yes, this is going to be a huge blow to the global economy. And as we can see, at least regarding oil prices, this is instantly visible to the naked eye. However, if we look at markets, we see that there is no serious panic yet. That is, everyone thinks that this will end quickly now and everything will return to normal. And then get this key sentence. He says, I, by the way, do not believe this. But hope does sustain the young. I mean, this guy's slick. And Solovyov says to him, what do you mean you don't really believe it? What do you believe? And Khazin says, I think this is the beginning. And this, unfortunately, is also what I believe. And so I suppose this is kind of a self-validation thing, because this is what I believe. And what he is saying is different economic models, different everything like that. But this is exactly how I think. Okay. And he said, I think this is the beginning of the fundamental destruction of the economic model itself. The whole model is now changing, the whole model. And this is me commenting on that. I should read his entire thing first and then comment, but I can't do it. But this is the beginning of the destruction of the fundamental economic models. And people aren't paying attention to this, except for people like Jeffrey Sachs, people like Mikhail Khazin, and me. Okay, and I'm no genius. Those two are, but I believe the same basic principles. Okay, on the economic sphere, regardless of what these idiots do, trying to show who's got the biggest weenie. I got the bigger weenie. Look at all these missiles I can throw your way. We shouldn't be involved in this war anyway. This is why you can't play risk and you got to play diplomacy, because risk. Who is the unstable partner? It's always America out creating wars somewhere, or Israel creating wars on America's behalf somewhere. I'm telling you, it's an unstable world, but where does the instability come from? When's the last time China ever started a war? When's the last time India ever started a war? When is the last time that Russia ever started a war? think about those things. Think about them and then answer these questions, because Mikhail Khazin says, I think this is the beginning of the fundamental destruction of our economic model, the world economic model. And he's talking about, the very next sentence, the very same Bretton Woods model, the dollar system, and so forth. The Western model is what he's talking about. It has been cracking for many years, but it has held. But now the collapse is beginning even more quickly. And the main reason is not even the strikes that still may occur. The main reason is logistics. The fact is that when the first tankers began to be attacked in the Straits of Hormuz, notice Iran announced that oil tankers, if they are not American, may calmly pass through the Straits of Hormuz, but the other ships are not moving. Why? And here I can expose my own hypothesis as a Khazin, but it seems to me to be the answer. The fact is, and this is what I believe, and he says it exactly why I think it this way. The fact is that no tanker will go anywhere if it cannot be insured. All insurance policies were withdrawn as soon as the operation began. New insurance is required. Now notice, I'm going to take a break here because Qatar stopped supplying natural gas immediately. And they're like number 3 in the world of natural gas supplies. And they shut down. Now, Iran did bomb one of their production facilities and right on the Straits, but Qatar shut down right away. And why? Because of the insurance issue. Because we're not going to do this and take the risk that we're not idiots, you know. We don't just send new tankers out and wait for somebody to blow them up. Look in the Mediterranean's not even safe. You got these idiots in Kiev blowing shit up. We got the U.S. blowing shit up in Sri Lanka, and we have Iran blowing shit up. People are constricting. They are sucking them back into their own. Russia, Putin just said what? He said, well, hell with them. We'll just cut them off ourselves. We've tried the route of let's figure this out. There's no reason to hate us. And, obviously they're going to still hate us. So screw them. We'll send our gas somewhere else. And he said, it's only a hypothesis, but damn, they're definitely leaning that way. It's all if the European communities are restricting, why in the world would you want to do business with them anyway? Hell with you. I'll sell my stuff to Pakistan. So what? You're still going to sell it. He's still going to make money. And, then he can continue to swat at the fly of Ukraine, right? And that's it. And so let's continue with Khazin. He says, neither insurance companies nor reinsurance companies, and it is the reinsurance companies that actually pay the money in the case of an emergency, have calculated their new rates going forward. So, and moreover, that is difficult to do because they don't know what's going to happen next. Nobody does. You think the insurance companies are going to insure your tanker so you can say, oh, gee, the U.S. is going to escort your tanker? That doesn't mean it ain't going to get blown up. It's like your chances might go down, but an actuarial table isn't going to change because there's a boat next to you. It's not going to happen. And so for these, moreover, this is difficult to do. And for this reason, everything economically in these markets has simply stopped. When the situation settles down, and it's unclear how long that will take, it won't be 2 weeks, in my view, it will become clear that the cost of logistics has increased dramatically, and it will affect everyone. And if the cost of logistics sharply increases, then small carriers are going to be forced out of the market, and large carriers will begin significantly raising prices to cover the cost of insurance and transit. And this is a much stronger blow to the world economy than bombs being thrown somewhere. Now, that's a direct quote of everything that Mikhail Khazin answered in response to that question, with some little Dobavitsky additions from Samuel. And that's me. And so Solovyov says, well, then, what's the price of oil going to be? And Khazin says, well, what kind of question are you asking? So because he thinks it's going to go back over $100 a barrel. And he says, these are not questions I'm asking personally. He said, the Israelis say the conflict could last till August. Bloomberg writes that the price will go above 100. And Khazin says it will go above 100. But the point isn't even that. Here's what he says. The point isn't even that. The point is that if logistics collapse, the cost of everything will rise sharply. And that's the problem. And then inflation will rise everywhere. Moreover, this inflation will not be monetary inflation where central banks can just print more money. It will be structural inflation when prices rise because the real cost of moving everything rises. And this is a much more serious global problem. This guy's extremely smart, friends and neighbors. And this is what some of the things I tried to express and can't do it as well as this guy. Because with monetary inflation, you can at least try to do something through interest rates at your national bank. But with structural inflation, there is nothing you can do. You just have to rebuild the entire economic model itself. Solovyov says, do you mean the entire global system? And Khazin says, yes, the global system, because the entire system is built on cheap, stable logistics, cheap oil, cheap transportation, cheap money, and now all of that is ending. And Vladimir Solovyov says, but then this means it will be a completely different world. Khazin says, that's of course. And this is exactly what we are entering right now. And Solovyov says, but this means the destruction of the previous model. And Mikhail Khazin says, yes, I've been saying this for 20 years. The Bretton Woods system cannot last forever, and it is ending. Now, I've been saying that for 2 years. I haven't been saying it for 20. I've been worried about it for 20. And Solovyov says to him, you once told an interesting story, and this is where he gets into the interesting story on economics. And to me, this is very interesting. I hope it is to you, because here's what he said. He said, you once told me an interesting story about how economics was taught in the Soviet Union and how it is taught now. And he said, yes, and this is an interesting story. And he's a global level economist, right? He says in the Soviet Union, economics was not taught as a separate science. It was taught as part of a political economics class, which meant the study of real economic processes, how production works, how resources move, how the balance between sectors function, and so forth. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we began to copy the Western model of economics education. And Western economic education is not the study of the economy. That's true. It's the study of mathematics and mathematical models. And as an economist myself, not anywhere near his level, I still remember the supply-demand curves and how you take time and function it in and all those things. I can still do it. It's not what I do for a living, but I still understand it, for the most part. And but these guys live it every day. And he says, economists today study models that have nothing to do with real life. They're studying mathematics. And Solovyov says, meaning they study formulas instead of reality? It's actually true. And Khazin says, exactly. They study models, but these models are built on assumptions that are completely unrealistic. For example, that markets are balanced, that participants behave rationally, that information is the same for everyone. But in real life, none of this is true. So when a crisis begins, all these models collapse because they simply do not describe reality. This is classic stuff. I love this. But of course, I like economics. And Solovyov says, meaning economists have been taught something that doesn't work? And Khazin says, yes. Basically, he's saying Soviet learning about market inputs instead of mathematical equations that might be able to explain why something happened after the fact, or even something that you can predict in the future. It has nothing to do with reality. Economics is basically at a point in time, and you got to understand all these other things. And you got to assume that, well, assuming supply and demand are equal, assume there's nothing impacting supply, assume there's nothing impacting demand. But right now they're impacting both supply and demand, and economists are going, well, I don't know, my model doesn't say anything about that. What in the hell am I going to predict now? Instability exists, which is why actuarial tables don't tell you how much you're going to pay for insurance on your next load of gas, liquid gas, through the Straits of Hormuz. And so Qatar's not gonna ship it until things stable down, and they can't get insurance. And that's why Trump yesterday, it might have been day before, he made some comment about, well, we're going to guarantee all insurance, because he knows this. Do you remember that quote? I wasn't able to find the exact quote, but he said something about it the other day. He said, well, I'm going to insure everything. Oh, there's a good plan. He'll insure everything. What are we going to do? Print more dollars? That's why Mikhail Khazin says that this is the collapse of the Bretton Woods system if we keep doing it. And I'm telling you, Pete Hegseth and these generals, and even Lindsey Graham out there thumping the drum for more war against people that aren't going to give up. They're going to fight to the death. That's it. And if that means they die, well, you know what? They will too become martyrs. And we've created a generation of martyrs. Another generation of martyrs. So if you think this is going to end in 2 weeks, you better think again. I believe differently. And it might calm down in 2 weeks, but this ain't over, and it never will be. And has it been over in the Middle East in the last 3,000 years? Seriously? It won't be over anytime soon. The Persian culture has been around for 2,500 years. They've seen people like us come and go. They've seen things come and go. It's not. This is just the beginning. Sadly, friends and neighbors. So, Mikhail Khazin says, yes, they're learning something that doesn't work. We're entering a new era economically. Khazin says, yes. And the main thing that will determine this era will be the destruction of the previous financial architecture, the dollar system, the logistics chain, which, by the way, he was talking about this logistics chain is Lloyd's of London. The global supply system, all of it will be rebuilt, he says. And that's the last of his commentary. I then reviewed one more. And this one has to do with the U.S. now funding Kurdish land troops, supplying them to take the mountainous areas. Now, okay. Anybody who knows even a remote little bit about what happened in Afghanistan over the last 20 years knows that it's a mountainous region that, we don't want. I mean, we didn't go there because we wanted it. We went there allegedly to get rid of terrorist cells and the Taliban and ISIS and all those things that are still in power after we gave up 20 years later and ran away, like in Monty Python. Run away, run away. How many did we lose? Gawain, Edgar, and Borg. That's 5. 3, sir. 3. Anyway, sorry, my Monty Python slipped in yet again. Sorry about that. So there are reports that of this. So here's what I want to discuss this next portion. Let me roll down to where it is. The troops crossing the border. Okay. Troops have broken through Iran's border, and NATO is really entering the combat. Just like we fund Ukraine and NATO is really funding Ukraine, this is NATO and the U.S.'s next forever war on behalf of Israel. That's what this is. And it's really the U.S. and not NATO in this instance. But Ukraine was all the United States too. So here's our next forever war from our peace president, right? Let's see. Troops are crossing the border. A military offensive against Iran has begun, and new emergency measures from Tehran are appearing. Putin has announced evacuation of Russians from the embassies and stuff like that. He went through a whole list of people and how they are able to get out. Maria Zakharova gave her report yesterday from the Ministry of Defense, and that was very, very interesting. I was hoping to include a bunch of that, but it's too much. I won't get to it. But she had a really good, she was talking about giving specific instructions for how the people are supposed to get out through Tajikistan, through wherever else is connected, former Soviet republics. She says they have methods in place and partnerships with the countries surrounding Iran, and Russians who work at the embassy or have private corporations that they work for. They need to go to the consulate or to the mission, the Russian mission, get their passport stuff, and then they will receive instructions on how to get through, and then they will be escorted basically through the systems in Tajikistan, a couple other places that they can cross, and she listed out the place of crossing where they can go and stuff like that. It was an interesting broadcast for how they plan to assist the Russians in getting out of harm's way. And so that's how they're doing. The U.S. has announced leaving. Get your poop in a group and get out of these countries. Let's get you out of there. And here's how we do it. I don't know if it's as formal, but I saw some steps in that for going to the embassy and whatnot, at least in places like Qatar, Bahrain, places like that, because of the air, what's going on in the air, and in Saudi Arabia. So, at any rate, will Article 5 on collective defense be invoked? Will everybody in Europe get involved? Will the U.S. now be pushing what Europe has been trying to push about Ukraine? And will it be some court? We don't know what these decisions will be. If we know anything, we know that it's completely unstable. That you don't know what Trump's going to do today, tomorrow, next day. Nobody knows. There's talk. What was it? Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying she thinks he's going senile now. So that stuff's going to start. People are going to be asking about what in the hell is he trying to do? Frankly, I want to know what in the hell is he trying to do. This is bullshit, pardon my French. This is just stupidity. All the way down the line, this is moronic, and we shouldn't be involved. Not at all. I'm one of the 60% who say that he's absolutely wrong, and this isn't what we voted for you for, Mr. Peace President. So, but, again, I think that internationally the guy's a mess. And so the policies are crap that we've been putting in internationally. Now we've gone to the other extreme from the idiocy of the Democrat Party and Hillary Clinton days, idiocy, and corruption, corrupt. Now it's the opposite. I'm king of the world, and this is what you're going to do. There's no negotiation. There's no discussion. There's only power. That's it. And that is not a world that I appreciate. I just don't appreciate. A bully in a sandbox. I don't appreciate it. But will Article 5 on collective defense be invoked? Iran doesn't intend to raise the white flag. Trump has been warned about a heavy price for starting this war in a very sharp statement. The Pentagon has launched an investigation after a strike at the girls' school in Iran. Now, that girls' school has been all over the news. 160 to 165 middle school age girls in school, 14 teachers blown up by an Israeli or American missile. And they show it, and they dig in the graves, and this is in the first day as part of the first strikes when the decapitation strike took out the Ayatollah. And it's not the Ayatollah. But anyway, took out the leader, the supreme leader. And the fact is that's when that is exactly when the same time period another strike hit. And that strike took out this school. 14 teachers, 106 students, parents, holding backpacks of their girls at school and stuff like that. It was an all-girls school, so it's all girls that were blown up. and bits and pieces. They haven't even identified all the bodies yet. It was so destructive. You don't hear a damn thing about it over here, but trust me, you're hearing about it in other sources. And the Pentagon itself has said it's going to launch an investigation after the strike to find out what happened. And nothing will ever happen because nothing ever does. But there you have it. And, war sucks. War is thing, but these are not pretty things. That's why they don't want you to see them. And Republicans and Democrats are sounding the alarm. Representatives of Tehran are speaking of sacrifice. They're already doing it. Death to America chants don't go down after this. They go up. Okay? Questions are being raised about Trump's psychological state. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Republicans and Democrats sound the alarm, emphasizing the age of the president. Fear inside America. Russian strikes against Europe. They're afraid of that. The Kremlin decides to get ahead of Brussels. Moscow's move after negotiations that he had with the Hungarian minister. Zelensky sends specialists from the armed forces of Ukraine to the Middle East. A decision has already been made, and at the same time, the Russians massively support negotiation between Kiev and Moscow. But how many support the war, and how many it has just become background noise, poll results. And all of this noise, the U.S. has unleashed war that has undermined the security of all America's partners in the Middle East. And it is beginning to strike the entire global economy. And it is not only about oil. Iran is striking not only military targets of the United States and Israel, but also the infrastructure of Persian Gulf countries, oil platforms, ports, airports, commercial ships. And this is from a magazine called Foreign Policy. And the consequences of these attacks go far beyond just the Middle East region. About a third of the world's oil and enormous volumes of gas, fertilizer, and chemicals pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Any disruption immediately hits prices and markets. In addition, the ports and airports of Gulf countries handling key routes of global trade, aviation transport, financial flow, and money transfers. I've told you this before. When you fly into, when you try to get to Russia or you try to get to India from America, where do you go? Your choices. Frankfurt on Main, which is a pretty good one if you're going the northern part. But in the southern part, where do you go? You end up usually in Dubai. You end up in Doha, Qatar. You end up in Riyadh, you end up in one of those three places, or Istanbul. I've spent a lot of time in Istanbul on connecting flights, but you have to connect through the Middle East somewhere, or the Persian area somewhere. You have to do it, and if you're going to get anywhere east to west, that's how it works. And all of that is effectively paralyzed. And already the movement of ships through Hormuz is sharply decreased. Flights in the region are canceled. Exchanges and markets, including the gold market in Dubai, this is going to be frightening to everybody, and all the people hoarding gold are going to be happy. All of them are paralyzed because, trade's not happening. Experts interviewed warn that a prolonged war will cause a global economic shock, the consequence of which will be far more serious than a simple rise in oil prices. And here they recall the famous words of U.S. President Woodrow Wilson. Now, I have a book of quotes, and I forgot to bring it, but I was going to look it up and see if I could find the actual quote, because this is just a paraphrase. And Woodrow Wilson, 100 years ago, warned that in the modern world, the consequences of war are not limited to the battlefield. They affect the life of the entire planet. That's Woodrow Wilson, 100 years ago, talking about planet. And if you want to know the truth, it's far worse today. You think there's something that blowing up or stealing a leader in Venezuela didn't cause problems? You think that, we're going to take over Cuba, even if you never do, even if you just threaten it and your saber rattling doesn't affect markets? Or you think that I'm going to steal Greenland too? And now we're still in Iran. We're not against ground troops. Who's we? You a-holes. Who's we? We're against it. The American public spoke pretty strongly that we don't want 20 more years like Afghanistan. Iraq. We don't want Syria. We don't want those Libyans. We don't want to fight with the Houthis. We don't want anything to do with that crap. But now here we are again. And so we elected the guy on the fact that he was not going to do these. He was the peace president. He can make a deal. Well, he can't make a deal. He just blows people up. But that's not him. We're doing it on behalf of the only people we can't control or refuse, and we must join in. We're doing it for Israel, and that's that. And Trump, this is why people think he might be losing it, because anybody normally would have told Netanyahu, screw you, I'm not doing that. Americans aren't for it, and we're not. So more against than for, that's for sure. The number is growing, by the way. So it appears that today's American politicians have forgotten Wilson's warnings, and by starting this war, Trump has exposed his partners in the Gulf to unprecedented attack. Qatar isn't going to supply gas. No way. They're disrupting the flow that serves as the life system of financially and life of the global economy. And a war with Iran will become a new problem for Ukraine as well. While the attention of the U.S. and Europe shifts to the Middle East, Kyiv is losing its own military and political support. That is why it's blowing crap up in the Mediterranean. Hey, we're still here. Look at us. We can help you take out those Iranians. Just send us more money, more arms. We can't win. They're not going to win anyway. The whole thing is a waste, and we aren't going to win long-term in Iran any more than we won long-term in any conflict started since freaking Vietnam, Korea, and before. We haven't won any of these. And this is going to be the same. And Lindsey Graham is out there doing the exact same thing he's been doing for 25 years. It's the exact same thing. Oh, we're going to kick the crap out of these guys. Yep. Next. Next. I'll tell you what, the Telegraph said that if the conflict continues, the U.S. and its allies will send air defense systems and missiles, including Patriots, to protect their own bases in the region of the Middle East instead of Ukraine. That's already happening, by the way. And this will seriously weaken even further Ukrainian air defense, which barely exists right now. And it already has a severe shortage of missiles. And it's already sending up $1.4 million Defense Patriot missile to defend against 30 drones that cost $5,000 a piece. And, so the lopsidedness of Patriots with drones originally manufactured by Iran for the Russians, well, for themselves, but for the Russians too, Patriots aren't going to help you against those, and they're not helping against those. So it'll seriously weaken Ukraine. This is also a risk of getting rid of any sort of diplomacy. Diplomacy's dead. You're not going to bring the Iranians back to the table. That's not going to happen. Negotiations between Kyiv, Moscow, and Washington are also impacted. They might stop, they are stopped and because of Trump's focus on the Middle East. So it is in Ukraine's interest that the operation in Iran doesn't drag on because they need to bring attention back to themselves. And they want to punish if they can help. They want to jump in too. Another fear is that the crisis in the Middle East will be prolonged. There's no significant process in either event anyway. Zelensky is trying with all his might to turn Trump back toward Ukraine, says the Telegraph. And they emphasize that Kyiv has offered Ukrainian assistance in repelling Iranian drones in the Middle East. The day before, it was confirmed that negotiations are on pause, Russia, U.S., and Ukraine. And specialists from Ukraine will still be sent to the Middle East And that's not going to hurt Ukraine at all, of course. Ukrainian specialists are going to work. They're going to be ready to help protect civilians. Oh, yeah. Same old crap. The military offensive against Iran is begun. Troops have crossed the border. Kurdish forces have begun a ground operation. Thousands of fighters from the U.S.-funded Kurdistan Free Life Party are already on Iranian territory and have taken positions inside the country. Now, this is a pro-Kurdish, pro-Ukraine source that I got this from. So it will be twisted, into their effect. So thousands of fighters from Kurdistan. Units are advancing in the mountainous areas in western Iran. Well, we don't want any of that either. Just like nobody wanted any of the stuff in, what do you call it? Afghanistan. Nobody's interested. It is reported, and they've lived there for centuries. The Kurds have as well. So we'll claim, we took a little chunk of Iran, and look at this, and our Kurds are there, and we support the Kurds, and the Turks hate the Kurds, and the Kurds hate the Turks, and they all hate Israel, and it'll be just the next iteration of the same old crap. Then the U.S. gets sucked into it, and it has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with Israel, and if we're their lapdog, which it appears to me, especially in this instance, then, it's really not in our favor, and people aren't for this. According to a representative of the coalition of the political forces of Iranian Kurdistan, fighters of the Kurdistan Free Life Party have taken positions in the area of the southern mountains in the city of Marivan in western Iran. And he said thousands of fighters have been deployed in the mountainous region. At the same time, the Iranian media denied the Kurdish offensive. The U.S. and Israel continue to strike Iran. A number of high-profile statements have been made, of course, by the Minister of War. We're going to kick the crap out of everybody. Yep. Iran is doomed and will never obtain a nuclear bomb, and the force of Washington and Jerusalem, the holy, will soon gain full air control over the entire territory of Iran. Well, good for you. So what? It ain't going to end the war. It ain't going to end what happens on the ground. The statement was made by Pete Hegseth. He also said the operation is only in its beginning phases and the U.S. is ready to continue, hear the words that you need to fear, Americans, as long as necessary. In addition, the U.S. published video footage of a strike against the Iranian warship in Sri Lanka. U.S. Navy carried out strike. So now instead of boats outside of Venezuela that had nothing to do with the seizure of Maduro and the stealing of oil from Venezuela, the U.S. Navy is going to blow up boats in a submarine did it. Yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, an American submarine sank an Iranian warship that felt it was safe. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo, the first sinking of an enemy ship by torpedo since the Second World War. We are fighting to win. Yeah, we've fought everything to win, and we've never won. Iran, however, does not intend to raise the white flag. In Tehran, they describe and declared that Trump will pay a heavy price for his actions. And the statement came from the Secretary of the National Security Council. Here's the quote. Trump has dragged the American people into an unjust war with Iran because of Netanyahu's impulsiveness and absurd actions. Now he himself will answer. After the death of more than 500 American servicemen in recent days, now that's a obviously inflated number, does the slogan America First still remain? That slogan is long gone. I don't support him with the 500. That's not truthful. But America First, this is definitely not America First. The Trump administration is running out of time to explain the war with Iran to Americans, writes Politico, and emphasize the contradictory statements of U.S. officials. The publication claims that dissatisfaction is growing within the MAGA movement. I read this too, it was interesting. Trump supporters fear a prolonged war. rising gas prices, and a new foreign conflict that contradicts his own promises and America first. The danger for the Trump administration is that it may lose control when the war ends. I think this is going to result in the loss of the House and the Senate. That's what I believe. And Iran also has its own words to say. Now, its attacks are forcing the U.S. to close embassies in the region, evacuate American citizens, and insure all oil tankers because Lloyd's of London will not. This affects the global economy. So what's the easy answer for Trump? Well, hell with it. We'll pay for it. We'll charge you insurance. We'll pay your insurance and they don't. We'll pay. So we're the global reinsurance policy because we started the war. Once again, who's going to fund it with no explanation? The U.S. taxpayers, right? So difficulties also been caused by the words of Trump's former supporter, Miss Marjorie Taylor Greene, who asked whether Trump's psychological condition is stable. She said, and I had the quote somewhere, but this is a paraphrase. Donald Trump has repeatedly said on camera and in interviews that he does not think he will go to heaven. What does that have to do with anything? And I want to ask a serious question. What's in his head? What psychological condition is he in? If he himself believes he's not going to go to heaven and he's already a man at the end of his life's path, what does that mean and how will it affect all of us? He's already said he doesn't care about his own ratings. Representatives of the Democrats are demanding answers and say Trump doesn't have a clear plan. I agree, he doesn't. I just left a closed briefing on Iran, and here is what I can say. Everything is much worse than you thought. You have every reason to be concerned. The Trump administration has no plan for Iran. Oh, yeah, let's fund the Kurds. There's a good plan. No, it's not. It isn't. They say, anyway, this is more commentary from that article. This illegal war is based on lies, started without any immediate threat to the United States. How do you not agree with that? There is no threat to us at all, even if Iran has a nuclear weapon. We don't give a crap. What do we care? Pakistan has them. Pakistan's got nuclear weapons. North Korea has them. Who's going to attack North Korea? Nobody. Why? Because they have weapons. Why does Ukraine want them? You think Vladimir Zelensky's not a moron or not a nutcase? He's a nutcase. And if we gave him nuclear weapons, he'd lob them out into Russia somewhere. I'm afraid Netanyahu's going to do that. I really am. I don't think that guy's stable at all. He's chosen by God. You want to say that you're going to bitch here about Trump not going to heaven or thinking he's not going to heaven so he can still do whatever he wants? The worst scenario, if he can do whatever he wants, is Netanyahu. He's worse. He thinks he's already in heaven. He thinks he's there. He is the chosen one. Period. End of sentence. He gets to control the United States, and he does, at least as far as this goes. So anyway, I'm ranting a little bit after that. And Donald Trump has not presented one single clear reason for this war. And apparently he has no plan to end it either. Instead, he has to show who's got the bigger weenie by going, oh, we got endless weapons. We got them everywhere. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send out that Hegseth. He was in the army before. Let's have him root rah troops. Let's have him do it. And that's all he's doing. That's it. Meanwhile, NATO has opened fire on an Iranian missile flying toward Turkey. According to Turkish Ministry of Defense, the ballistic missile launched from Iran flew through Iraq and Syria and headed toward Turkish border, intercepted by a NATO air defense system. This is the first case since the beginning of the current war when Iranian missiles were directed toward a NATO country. The alliance condemns this attack. However, the Pentagon stated there are no grounds for activating Article 5 on collective defense. Turkey summoned the Iranian ambassador. Ankara stated it may respond in kind, Ankara, Turkey, that means, for those of you that don't understand where the capital of Turkey is, all necessary steps to defend our territory and airspace will be taken decisively and without hesitation, say the Turkish Foreign Ministry. So now we're going to suck Turkey into a war. We remind everyone that we reserve the right to respond to any hostile action against our country. The U.S. Ministry of War, Department of War, has announced, The beginning of an investigation into the circumstances of the strike on the girls' school in southern Iran. According to Tehran, more than 160 people were killed. The victims were all schoolgirls. Pentagon chief Pete Hegseth said while answering journalist questions, "Can you provide updated information about what the administration knows regarding reports of strikes on girls' school in southern Iran on Saturday? All I can say is we are investigating. We, of course, never strike civilian targets." Yeah, right. But we are studying this incident and conducting an investigation. The issue has caused a major reaction. Iranian authorities claim the strike occurred on February 28th in the city of Minab, and among the victims were students of primary and secondary school. Al Jazeera says the school probably educated the daughters of members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So these are important girls. Yeah. Let's cause harm. I am so cynical. We're killing, we're decapitating. Why not kill their whole families? What if you think that somebody important's kid was in there and you can take care of him by killing one of his family? Hegseth's not above that. Neither is Trump. Netanyahu definitely isn't above that. In fact, this is the preferred method. We targeted individuals, leaders of countries. And why? Because we have the biggest wiener. That is why. And that's the only reason that we did it. We're not doing it to encourage them to do it. We're doing it to dominate, period. We're going to be world dominant, and the world is not going to like it. And now we are probably in the very beginnings of people realizing that we got 3 more years of this shit. And it's going to keep on coming. I don't believe in the stability of any of these people. Netanyahu especially. That guy needs to be examined. I don't know about Trump. I don't know. But I'm seriously questioning these latest actions. And when you watch Hegseth, I've seen a million sergeants like him. He just gets to get up, commanders, whatever. Oh, rip, we got him, boys. We're going to go kill us. And so we's going to hang us. He's one of those people. More war. He's a cheerleader. That's it. And it's not good. So anyway, I'm ranting again. At the same time, Iran's ambassador... by the way, I meant to finish this last thing, that the daughters of the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, but next to that facility, a military facility is located near that school, and this building previously was part of the infrastructure. At the same time, Iran's ambassador to Belarus, his name is Saneh, connected the strike with a sacrifice made for the success of the armies of Israel and the United States. And, they're turning these people, I'm telling you, into martyrs everywhere. And that is the danger. You can't convince a martyr. It won't happen. And at a press conference in Minsk, Belarus, after a meeting with Lukashenko, the following statement was made. This may be connected with the Epstein cult. Perhaps they carried out a ritual there for sacrificing children. For some, it is war. For others, it is profit. Against a background of the situation in the Middle East. Now, I think that comment was nothing but inflammatory. But entrepreneurial people in Dubai are making money off of this. Tourists and expats are willing to pay enormous sums to leave the city. Prices have soared. Airline prices. For evacuation from Dubai, families are paying up to $250,000. This has been reported in the Financial Times because you can't get out of Dubai. You can't get out of Egypt. You can't get out of any place there. You're not getting out. You're there, you're trapped. That's why the Russians are trying to come up with ways to get their people out of Iran and out of these other countries. And, interesting times. This is also reported by the Financial Times. According to insurance companies that deal with crisis assistance, evacuating one family of 2 adults and 2 children can cost up to $250,000 if a private jet has to be used. Commercial air is certainly unreliable. Prices for charter flights doubled in the last few days. Even ground evacuation is extremely expensive. A taxi or minibus from Dubai to Muscat, the most popular escape destination, now costs thousands of dollars instead of several hundred. Some flights from Dubai and Abu Dhabi are gradually resuming, but most regular flights remain canceled, and tens of thousands of passengers are stranded in the largest airports in the region. That was another Solovyov commentary. It was pretty damn funny, actually. When he was talking to Khazin, they were saying that the people couldn't get in and out of Dubai and Russians couldn't get out. And Vladimir Solovyov says, well, because Dubai is full of Russian escorts. I mean, everywhere. They all go there and just start selling, and they get incredibly wealthy because you know how good looking they are, and all the young girls are in Dubai and are in Abu Dhabi, and you know they fly there from all over the world. And Solovyov says something like, "Well, that's going to cause a rise in the prices of an escort." The price of an escort is going to triple, overnight too, and so that's not going to be good. And so, anyway, most flights remain canceled. Tens of thousands are stranded. European countries have already begun repatriation flights for their own citizens. So, they're sending their own planes. And Putin has announced evacuation measures for Russians. Russians stranded in the Middle East are evacuated by the Ministry of Emergency and the Ministry of Defense. Financial Times says we're seeing taxis starting from $5,000 and higher, said one insurance executive. The main problem is the U.S. State Department recommends leaving the region using available commercial flights, but right now such flights are non-existent. Although companies in the region are asking employees to work remotely, more and more residents, tourists, expats are trying to leave because the conflict shows no sign of ending soon. U.S. is preparing to indefinitely remove the German subsidiary of Rosneft from sanctions. So because of the U.S. creating problems in the gas and oil industry, they are talking removing Rosneft, which is the Russian oil company that has been sanctioned individually, and Lukoil, which has a lot of Russian stuff. I talked about it a little bit on here, removing them from the list of sanctions so that they can sell gas and oil in eastern Russia. This will be a serious diplomatic victory after tense negotiations with Washington, says Bloomberg, because Germany wants to work with Rosneft. They are. It's a messed up, muddled up, shook up world, except for Lola. The decision is expected to be announced by the Office of Foreign Assets Control of the U.S. Treasury soon. The issue concerns Rosneft Germany, whose assets Berlin took control of after the start of the war in Ukraine in 2022. Since then, they remain under state administration in legal uncertainty. Rosneft Germany owns 3 major German oil refineries that provide 12% of the country's oil refining. Among them is the refinery in Schwedt near Berlin, as a stake in Transalpine pipeline through which oil enters Central Europe. Putin decided to get ahead of Europe and instructed his government to study the possibility of stopping European or Russian gas supplies to the European Union, as I described to you earlier. He described the statement not as a decision, but as thinking aloud, and I shared the full statement with you. He noted Moscow's will consider such step because European countries are nuts. The Kremlin is going to consider leaving. The statement came after his meeting with the Hungarian foreign minister. So Russians are massively supporting peace negotiations, as well as, let's see where the latest numbers. According to Bloomberg, 67% support negotiation, 24% support continuing the war. Now, that's Bloomberg reporting that, and I'm not sure. I haven't seen the actual report yet. This is a report of a report. And that's all for today on International Flavor. I'm very glad you are with me. Tomorrow is Civic Outlaws. I'm going to share with you my latest article on HB House Bill 3154 and its companion bill, Senate Bill 1407. more government bureaucratic overreach, in my humble opinion, which we at Civic Outlaws take very seriously and wish to inform people about. That show will go from 7:30 tomorrow morning to approximately 8:30. And that is it. That'll be my last show for the week. This is my last international flavor for the week. I'm very glad you showed up. At the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. You can listen live at damradio.com to fantastic music all through the day, except when wonderful talk radio is on board. And we hope you do. You can find all former shows from Damn Radio at damradio.com/podcast. My show, International Flavor, you can always find at internationalflavor.com. All of my prior programs are safely tucked away out there. We hope you join Civic Outlaws tomorrow morning and continue listening to Damn Radio each and every day, where you can get the truth only here on International Flavor. It just tastes better. Have a nice day.